June 29th, 2005, item number 56. Today's guests are Len and Knorah from the Jawbone Radio Podcast.
Podcast411.com. Listen different.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Rob, and this is the Podcast 411 Podcast. Before we get into the interview with Len and Knorah, one big news and note item, which of course is iTunes. iTunes v4.9 was released on Tuesday, as we had speculated in the previous podcasts, and a lot of talk about what this means, what's going on, who made it in, who didn't make it in, and why they possibly didn't make it in. First, let me say this. If your name is not in the iTunes store, don't be shocked. There's a lot of big names that aren't in there right now. PK&J, Kimi, Closet Deadhead, Skepticality. There's a lot of shows that didn't make it. One possible reason that I've been hearing, and it sounds like the most likely one, why your show may not have made it in, would be if you're playing any RIAA non-pod safe music. If you have any RIAA music in any podcast you've done in your feed, that is one reason why you may not have been included right now. The other is just logistics and manpower. I heard they have only about 3,000 podcasts in out of the 8,000 they talked about, and you know that out of those 3,000 that are in, most of those are going to be the corporate ones first, then the, quote, indie podcasts second. One of the things iTunes did not release information about until they released iTunes is the fact that there is a new format or coding structure you have to add into your RSS feed. Now, if you've read my tutorials and you hand code your RSS feed, this is really simple to do, add the additional lines. I have a link to their white paper on the front page. There is one error in the white paper we found so far, and that is for the image tag. I'm going to be addressing that in the forums. Look on the forum board. There is under help, there was a string started on one-click subscription. You'll also notice on our main page that there is now a orange iTunes one-click. If you click on that, that'll take you right to the Podcast 411 page in iTunes. By the way, feel free to steal that chiclet. It's something I created, and it's open for anyone to use. So if you want to take that iTunes one-click chiclet and put it on your page and then put a URL for your site, please do so. Steal it to use. What you'll be seeing on our page going forward is when we interview guests, I'm going to have a iTunes one-click chiclet next to the interview, and that'll allow you to go to the person who I'm interviewing's iTunes page in the iTunes Music Store. There's a white paper. There's a lot of things going around. Give us a couple days to settle out. We'll have added instructions in our RSS tutorial specifically for iTunes. So if you are hand coding your RSS feed, this is not a big issue. If you're using WordPress or some automated method, you're going to have to check with those people to see if they're going to allow you to add in these additional iTunes-specific fields. That's it for now. We're going to go ahead and get into the interview with Len and Knorah. Here we go. Len and Knorah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And start out with the first question, and that is, what was your first computer?
My first computer was an IBM 8088 that was given to me by Nora's brother. It took 10 minutes to boot up. And it's funny because I never used computers until after we got out of college, which was right around 92.
What was the first podcast you listened to?
Coverville.
Yes. Both Nora and I both listened to Coverville. Brian Ibbett from Coverville. Still one of my favorites. I love that show a lot. And then I think I listened to Adam Curry when I first started getting into it. I mean, I think everybody who was getting into podcasting or listening to podcasts, downloaded the daily source code. And so, what Adam was doing was really interesting because it sounded like a regular radio show. And that's when I kind of got it. Like, oh, okay, I kind of hear what's happening with this. And in some ways, it kind of made us, or made me long for the days of when we used to be on the air and stuff like that. So, and I've always wanted to go back to radio for a real long time. I didn't know if I had to go and get my license again and stuff like that. And so this podcast thing really worked out well because I didn't really have to do anything except invest in some audio equipment.
Normally, at this point, I'd ask you guys what podcasts you listen to, but rather I want to get into talk about the podcast outlaws.
Okay.
Well, let me clarify a few things right out of the box here. The podcast outlaws are, in fact, not convicted felons. I just want to let everybody know that right away.
As far as we know.
Right.
Rob, are you convicted at all?
No, never convicted.
Never convicted. There you go.
Yeah. And answering yes will not necessarily disqualify you from this position. I just want to let you know that.
The Outlaws is a great little idea, like a brainchild of Aaron from Queen Creek and Mr. X from the Mr. X and Just Julie show. And I think it was a couple weeks, like about a month or 2 months ago, where we just started exchanging emails back and forth, and it kind of just grew from like an email conversation into something that Mr. X wanted to do for a real long time, which was shine the light on other little-known podcasts. Because, you go over to Podcastella or you read any kind of story about podcasts, and it's always the same 5 or 6 different people who are being touted around. So this was an opportunity for us to kind of shine the light on some smaller, lesser-known people and just get their name out there. And I think, I think it's doing well. I don't see the stats on it at all. I don't know who's downloading, but apparently it's getting a lot of good press, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I know that there's many days I just can't cover all the ones we have to vote on. I just I can't get to it.
I can't. It's so hard to listen to everything that we get. I trust you, Rob, and I trust Aaron because, you guys, and Zaldor too. You guys know what's good. If I come across something that I think is kind of funny, I'll post it on there. Like Simulacrum, which I think is one of my favorite. Nora and I love listening to that one, after shows or whatever, and just for some reason we just find that show really funny. I wish he did more of them. This guy from England who does an interview show with famous celebrities, but they're obviously not the people that he's talking to. It's just it's something just dry and British that's really funny about it. I don't know.
And what's your favorite topic? What do you like to produce?
Well, I like this. I like the interview. I call it more of a conversation podcast. So, I like to talk to the different podcasters. I like to learn. I like to teach. I like the ones that are teaching and educational and techy and geeky. Although I've been told, as I mentioned in my email, that this is not a tech podcast.
That's right. Not.
Technically, we're not a tech podcast.
We talk about how to podcast, but we're not technically a tech podcast.
We give a lot of advice on a variety of topics. And in some cases, we're qualified to do so. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk about your show. And what can people expect to hear when they tune into your show? What is your show about?
I'm going to let Nora handle this because she knows better what our show is about than I do.
Yeah, please let Nora
Most
speak.
nights.
You're talking all over her. So.
That's just the way I am, I guess.
Our show is, it's been said that our show is basically about zippy patter, and there is some of that. It is a conversation between myself and Lenny, and oftentimes involves exploring newfound things, like a brand new program or a strange new trend or something in the pop culture. Chimps are always popular subjects. Yeah. And then there is kind of a recurrent theme of advice, which is kind of tongue-in-cheek, because why would anybody tune in to get advice from me about, romance or whatever? I mean, we just sort of feed in some of these kind of silly things. But we also have a fair number of guest interviews, and we do encourage a lot of interaction with our listeners. So, for instance, a lot of production pieces have been donated, including the intro, the outro, song. At least one song was written about us.
I know I heard that song. Who produced that? That was very good.
That was Dee Verada, who is a talented musician locally.
That's the one thing about our show that has really kind of surprised me, is that we have a very, very active listener base and very interactive with us. We get a lot of voicemails and listener submissions, and it's just really a great... it's very flattering, I guess, because usually when you're doing these podcasts, I know when we first started, it just felt like we were throwing them out into just the abyss, as most podcasters feel like. And to get feedback like that is always...
startling.
Yeah, startling and also very flattering. So
Not always flattering.
It is nice when you get emails back and feedback. It makes you feel like, okay, those 5-10 hours to do that show, it was worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
We're also starting to realize that we do have a fair amount of interest from overseas in our program, for whatever reason. We're big in Japan.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we do have regular listeners from a variety of different countries. I don't know if that says something about them, about us, or the state of television in Portugal. But what's funny is that the oddest comments tend to be the ones that, for whatever reason, people will pick up on and like write back to us about, or will develop some kind of back and forth with us. So it's not the fact that we went to the zoo and we talked about animals and whatever. It was somehow or other like a discussion about whether you can eat the platypus, which has garnered the most attention, or Patrick Swayze, or
people pick up on the silliest little things. But
now, how would you eat platypus? Do you think it's filleted with some spices, or just?
I think you'd have to eat it quickly and in the dark, because I'm pretty sure that it would be illegal, so it's endangered. But
I think the Aborigines just grabbed them and just sunk their teeth into them and hope for the best. I mean, it was an original Aboriginal treat.
But I mean, we had this fellow from Australia call in saying apparently you can eat them. And I thought, well, I suppose you could probably say that about anything. I mean, you could probably eat just about anything. I don't know if it'll stay down.
So coming up on your show, switch back to your show here, what can the listeners expect to hear in upcoming episodes?
Well, we're going to do another show where I'm going to be pantless again, which is always that I always find. We did a pantless show, or I did a pantless show with Matt from the Metal Show. Unbelievable! It was just great.
You mean you're supposed to wear your pants when you're doing podcasting?
No. Oh yeah. Well, you're pantless right now too. Awesome. No. Well, coming up, we're working on. We have been working on some other interviews here. We're going to be talking to a gentleman next week. Found him off of boingboing.net. I think I posted a link on our blog about it. But he takes kids' drawings and turns them into actual real beautiful paintings. This guy's name is Dave DeVries. He does the Monster Engine, and I think we're going to be talking to him next week. Other than that, it's kind of funny. We usually don't have a plan for the show because it's it's usually when we can get up here, or I can get Nora up here to do a show with me. So we just kind of talk about it a little bit and just say, what do you want to talk about? I have a couple things I want to talk about.
We have some musical submissions, and we're working on also a couple of more celebrity interviews, which we haven't been able to schedule yet. But if we ever do get them scheduled, would make for interesting shows. And
like real celebrity.
Right. And this time Lenny will press the record button.
That was painful, man. Oh my gosh. You don't know. It was like the worst Friday the 13th ever.
And we'd also like to include some more movie reviews. Those are always fun to hash out on a program.
Yeah, because we watch a lot of movies now that we have this little movie theater in our basement. So we've been watching more movies from Netflix than we probably have in the past, and we just watch a variety of different films, and some are good, some are bad.
Nora, you should feel guilty about falling asleep, by the way.
I did manage to watch a movie in its entirety the other night, so I feel like I'm capable. If I just really put in the effort, I can.
Well, it was an interesting film.
It was.
I was going to ask, your little logo here is kind of cute. Who did your logo?
My wife.
That's cute.
Yeah.
It's a little Nora can't see it, but it's a little pea pod, and it's he's fishing, and he has a little.
He's a podcaster.
It's cute. It's a little pea pod, and he got like a little 411 on there. It's very, very cute.
Yeah, so it's podcast 411. So a picture representation of our website.
I tell you, man, it beats the podcast pickle guy. What's wrong with the pickle man?
That's the best. Did you hear that show?
Yeah.
The one that we did where we played that?
Yeah.
That was great. I loved that.
Paul from Barefoot Radio did that.
Yeah, but we used it on our Bigfoot thing.
It worked well, I think.
Before we forget, tell our listeners where to locate your podcast and website.
They can come to us at Jawbone Radio at blogspot.com. What I like to think about the blog is it's more than just the show, because every once in a while I'll post something that's of interest and kind of neat. So if they go to the blog, rather than just go to the feed, which is feeds.feedburner.com/Jawbone Radio, they'll get all kinds of neat stuff.
You can also leave a voicemail message for Lenny at the following telephone number.
It's 206-666-2326.
You're on a Mac, I take it, by
yes.
something comments you said. What software are you using to do your editing and recording?
what aren't we using? I too use GarageBand occasionally. I think the first couple of shows we did, we actually recorded in a GarageBand. What I've done now is I've moved everything over to Audio Hijack Pro, so we record the show in Audio Hijack Pro, which is a lot quicker than GarageBand ever was, for me at least. We usually do our Skype interviews sometimes through Wiretap, but now I've started to move everything over to Audio Hijack Pro. So as far as software goes, I mean, we use the line-in stuff, and I mean, the whole setup came from reading an article in Mac Addict, and they kind of had a setup on how you could record stuff, and so our first setup came through that, and then but right now everything is just going through Audio Hijack Pro basically as far as our software goes. You had said, did you use GarageBand to record? Do you find that that's
well, I do two-step process. I record the interviews on my iRiver, and then the interviews come in. After I bring the interview in, then I do all the editing in GarageBand, because GarageBand is great for editing. If you want to take out ums and uhs, it's a wonderful program. You can edit everything together and pull it together, make it tight, and not hear that you've actually sound like it's been edited.
I actually use those on these Henkel podcasts that I just did, these duct tape podcasts. Use GarageBand for that, and it was a much better way of editing, definitely. I wouldn't recommend that you record straight into GarageBand for podcasts.
I do record my introduction and my conclusion directly into GarageBand.
Oh, there you go.
So I do record, but not the interview, just the intro and the conclusion. I do record right in through my M Audio, bring it in via USB, and record that way, and it works fine for me.
So we're being recorded right now via an iRiver?
Yes.
Wow, very nice.
If I hit the record button, we are. Yes, I did.
Isn't that awesome?
But yes, so on the iRiver, and that is how I do it.
Let me ask you this. As far as your hardware goes, now, are you using any kind of, like, professional mic or anything, or do you have, like, a setup like that?
I have condenser mic, an Apex 415. It's not the best end of the condenser mics. It's a $115, $120 mic, but it's a good condenser mic. Got it on an arm. Yeah, and I tell people, if you're looking for mics and stuff like that, go to your local guitar store rather than trying to get them online, because at least there they'll let you return them, let you try some out. You can really get a feel for a mic that's going to work for you. So a lot of them have a bunch of mics set up, and you can talk into the different mics and listen to yourself and hear which one you like better.
Is this going to be fascinating to your listeners?
That's why I take it down to 15 minutes. The whole interview that we talk will be edited down to 15 minutes of talk.
Oh, very good.
So he's going to edit you completely out, Len.
I want Nora to...
Nora.
I want Nora to say some stuff.
Yeah. What do you want me to say, Len?
Go ahead.
I think I've got 15 minutes of Nora. I'm okay. That's good. We're good to go. I actually got 14 minutes. I'll give you 1 minute in there, Len.
Okay, great. Good.
Because you're the only one that answered really about the computer, so I got to use you on the first question. But then after that... Is there anything else you'd like to say about the show before we wrap up here?
Oh, we appreciate the interest in the program, and certainly hope that from time to time people will give us a listen.
Yeah, and yes, if the one thing that we can't stress enough, that and this goes for any podcast, is if you like what you're listening to, just drop the person a note, let them know, because feedback is the most important thing. It's like the lifeblood of anybody who's podcasting right now, because other than you do the show, and you're really not doing the show for yourself, you're doing it for somebody out there, hopefully, and when you make that connection, it really is important. And that's the thing is, I've been doing message boards for years, and I find that this form of communication is you tend to make a more intimate bond with someone, because you can actually hear their voice and hear inflection. It's not like an email where you have to kind of guess if the person is being sarcastic or if the person is, just, doesn't care. So yeah, so it's feedback from anybody is really important. Feedback from listeners, and I think we've just been really lucky that we've been able to get people to listen to us.
Well, thank you guys both for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Rob, for having us.
Well, folks, that concludes our interview with Len and Knorah from the Jawbone Radio Podcast. You can check out their podcast at www.jawboneradio.blogspot.com. And I highly recommend you do. This is one of those podcasts that is highly recommended by many podcasters, and when you check it out, you'll understand why. Well, I would like to thank Jason over at Delta Park Project for a lot of tips he's given on the iTunes and one-click subscription and for starting the thread in the forum board. And speaking of Delta Park Project, on this Saturday, our next podcast will be an interview with Jason and Anna from the Delta Park Project. So please make sure you tune back in on Saturday's podcast to hear them. At the end of today's podcast, we're going to be playing a promo from the podcast Pickle. So this is their upcoming contest. And this promo was created and produced by Paul over at Barefoot Radio. I interviewed Paul today for an upcoming interview that will be played next week sometime. So, Paul, thanks for coming on today. I had a blast interviewing you, even though Skype kept dropping out. As always, this is your host, Rob, reminding you to listen different with Podcast 411.
What's bringing podcasters together in the biggest cross-promotional podcasting effort ever?
I'm the Pickle Man, and I need you to vote for my new name.
The entries are in, and Podcast Pickle's Pickle Man needs a new name. We're down to 5 names, and now it's time for you to vote.
So, Pickle Man, you ready for a new name or what?
Yeah, Nate, I am, but I'll always be the Pickle Man.
Hey, man, we're announcing your new name on our show with an award ceremony. Did you know that?
The Pickle Man always has the inside information, Nate.
Okay.
But thanks for your concern.
Be a part of history and vote for the Pickle Man's new name. He's doing it for action and for podcasters. What name do you like? P. Dilly, Squeezle, Pepe, Wild Dill, or Phil the Dill? Get yourself over to Podcast Pickle after the 16th of June and vote for the Pickle Man's new name.
No way.
Yes way, Nate. And while you're at it, listen to the Nate and Di Show where the new name and winner of the contest will be announced.
Hello?
Hey, Jeanette, this is the Pickle Man.
Hi, Pickleman. I'm really gonna miss you.
Honey, I'll always be the Pickle Man to
I
you.
hope so.
Hello?
Who's that?
Paul?
I knew it. You've been seeing the Pickle Man behind my back.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't count. It's a fantasy.
Jeanette, stop flirting with the Pickle Man.
It's good to be the Pickle Man.
Go right away to podcastpickle.com and vote for the Pickle Man's new name. Your podcast may depend on it. Jeanette, all our lives may depend on it.
Go to podcastpickle.com and vote for the Pickleman's new name.
This promo was produced by Paul at barefootradio.com.